First of all, it was lovely to hear the Welcome to Country this morning because I actually went to school with Anne Coe, who was Anne Coe, Anne Weldon. My mother used to drive around her cousin Isabel and other of the people from the mission, they used to call it in those days, a Ramby, to various sports events around the New South Wales Western, because they were really good sports people and very smart people as well in their school, and my mum spent a lot of time doing that. So it's nice to have a personal link to such a nice thing, and I haven't seen her for probably 12 years. So I jumped out and said hello. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, their wisdom, enduring history and culture. Welcome and thank you for allowing me to pass on a few bits of what I hope will be see as wisdom, drawn from my career as a public servant, a business person, a political advisor. This is not actually doing it in order. Okay, so now we're at where I need to be. Drawn from my career as a public servant, a business person, political advisor to oppositions and governments, and a public policy advocate. Sir Humphrey Appleby from the documentary series Yes Minister once said to Bernard, "If you do not want Cabinet to spend too long discussing something, make it last on the agenda before lunch." Unfortunately, we're just after lunch, so I've intended to talk for the quick 6 or 8 minutes. I love the subtlety of the warning signs. And if I've been successful, then we'll have a good Q&A panel with the other panellists afterwards. Okay. Selling is just another word for persuading, convincing others what you're saying or promoting or offering is better than the other possible alternatives. So I'm actually not opposed to selling. A lot of people get worried about that phrase, but we're all sellers and we're all salespeople. When putting forward a policy proposal, the product is your idea rather than a widget, but the challenge remains exactly the same. You've got to convince those who ultimately have the power to make the choice that the preferred option you are recommending is the one that should be adopted or bought. So you need to think that in mind and not get too much concerned about that. As Sir Humphrey also said on another occasion, our job is to see that the PM is not confused. Politicians are simple people. They like simple people. They like simple choices and clear guidance. And that's not changed in 40 years or 30 odd years since that's been around. Now it's interesting, as I said, this is going, here we go, right. I'm not going to talk on each of these topics that I'm putting up on the slides. I actually have got some more substantive notes that will be circulated with a PDF to explain some of these things. Dan Kahneman, who I met about 20 years ago, and Tversky, in groundbreaking work in 79 and since, studied the conditions under which people make conservative or risky judgments. They observed evidence supporting what they call the prospect theory, that the prospect of loss has a greater impact on decision making than the prospect of an equivalent gain. A decision maker will select the option with the highest subjective utility, in other words, what's in it for them, whether or not that provides the highest objective gain. You can frame to improve your chances of getting a certain result, and this can be done in a way that is not manipulative, but simply better cast the arguments so they will be perceived as you want them to be. In looking at various public policy problems, you need to be aware of framing and how to defend against it. I've included in my notes a few tactical approaches you might use and some links as well that are really useful. And it's not, again, advertising and marketing type selling. It's actually selling something that's really valuable and explaining to people why it ought to be valuable for them. Oops, this has gone ahead again. Yes. One of the things that's really important is that there are framing tools, so for you to get your argument out there. Effective frames use a variety of tools to help people see why they care and to document and describe the problem and solution. Now, some of these, and I'll expand them in the notes so I won't talk about them all. It includes stories, slogans, catchphrases, artefacts, contrast, social math. Each conceptual frame can use multiple tools, and remember that what works best will depend on your audience. So if possible, test alternative frames. Of course, as you're now well aware from the quotes I've been using, Yes Minister has a few of its own tips that are invaluable in this instance. If you're not happy with Minister's decision, there is no need to argue him out of it. Accept it warmly, and then suggest he leaves it to you to work out the details. And that's actually not too bad, and the reason there is because of the conversation we had earlier, it's about trust. And so if the minister trusts you to do something, or if whoever you're selling to trusts you, they'll let you do stuff. You've got to match the trust, of course, and deliver what they're expecting, otherwise then that trust is gone. So that's very simple. And the other one that his comment was, ministers are ignorant, not because we do not give them the right answers, because they don't ask us the right questions. And so again, framing to get the right questions is really important if you're trying to sell a policy. I will talk a little bit more about elevator pitch and what that means for you in the notes, not now. Interestingly, this seems to be a whole series of quotes from Yes Minister, but I like that. I think it's actually relevant. Hacker's press officer in one of the Yes Minister shows says, if any sentence in a television broadcast has more than 20 words, when it gets to the end, most people have forgotten how it began, including the person speaking it. And in commercial sales training, and I had quite a few years in IT sales, well, managing salespeople selling IT, it's a rule that says if you take longer than 15 to 20 minutes for your sales presentation, you're likely to spoil the sale or lose it altogether. And to have an ad seen 3 times, you need to run it 20 times, is an advertising maxim. And my favourite, the vomit rule, which says that if you repeat something so often you feel like vomiting, only then is it likely to be cutting through the public. And I have to say, in the energy space, it's really interesting because, you know, the understanding of what people are buying is not very good in the energy space. We failed in education at that. Everybody knows the difference between a kilometre and kilometres per hour. They don't know the difference between a kilowatt and kilowatt hours. In fact, a lot of the people selling that stuff don't know that, and a lot of engineers I know don't know that. But nevertheless, I'm really trying to say the marketing could be improved, and not in a technical sense, but in a sense that's understandable by the people we're talking about. I don't want to blow my chances. I've just had the slow warning sign, because if I go over my pitch, then I'll blow it and you will all have forgotten about it. Brevity is, in fact, the soul of wit, although I'm not exactly the person to tell you that. I have to say, anybody that knows me. Okay, that was part of knowing your audience. One of the other things, which is another little Yes Minister quote, conjurers offer the audience any card in the pack and always get them to take the one they want. That is the way we in the civil service get ministers to take decisions. But people are actually more open to information if it's framed in a way that resonates personally with how they see the world, their values and their identities. That's why research about your audience, their values and identities is step number 1. And I guess the summary for that from my perspective is make it personal. And that's why I like the idea of the having a look at climate change in the same sort of light. And I'm talking about things, try to find what it is that's an impact for them. And keeping it simple is my last little message. I'm not going to read that out. That's a pretty interesting thing. And what's that saying is just keep it simple and don't make it too complex. That's really what the case is. I close with an issue that's interesting for me, that's driving all the changes to the energy system, and that's climate change. I used to be a great sceptic about single issue people. I've been involved in policy for years and highly sceptical because we've got complex systems. And now I think that no other issue is of matter, because if we don't get the climate change right, the rest is trivia. It doesn't matter. We won't win anything. So I think I'll leave you with that. And we have a conference, and I'm happy to take any questions afterwards. Thank you.